Welcome back, everybody, to the Financial Advisors Workshop. This is the show where we interview some of the top financial advisors in America of all race, colors, creeds, and all types of people that work with the public and handling investments in their financial life. Today, we have Jason Lund, and he's out in California, which is a great place to be. Jason, welcome to the show today, the Financial Advisor Workshop.
Well, glad to be here, Brian.
Well, good. Well, we started talking a little bit earlier about your trajectory a little bit in the industry and the uniqueness and things that you do. Can you just tell us a little bit about your background, how you got up to where you are as an independent advisor now?
Brian, as many of us do, I started out on the insurance end with Prudential. That was 34 years ago. And after about 4 years of that, I realized it was, well, tactically and strategically not the way I wanted to go.
Okay.
I felt as though there was some duress for sales. I wanted to go independent. So after 4 years, I left Prudential. Now, at that time, the first 20 years, I was on the BD, the broker-dealer side. So I left there and I became independent. I went over to Nationwide and I began to tally a better, shall we say, status of clientele. Let's say some higher impetus to escalating my practice. We're talking to people who had a need and a desire not only to better themselves, but were in also dire need of proper type of information. I think that the greatest difference between advisors can simply be their ability to learn, to scale their communication, and to provide the necessary information to the quantifiable part of their client. That is where they live, where they exist in their world of business personally, their tax stream, their income. All of the things that come together, especially income tax and related effect, that can create havoc with them as they escalate their net worth and as the change management necessary for them to understand how to fix what is going to be a huge future tax burden passes them by.
Excellent. So then you're Nationwide, and then how do you progress from there?
From Nationwide, I stuck around there about 3-4 years. They went from being the original broker-dealer to calling themselves 1717 Capital Management.
Okay.
From there, I went to Orba Financial, and I worked there for an extended period of time. And every time I have left one position for another, one broker-dealer for another, or even an insurance IMO for another, I've done it specifically to gain access to a higher degree of intellectual property.
Okay.
For the first 20 years of my practice, I was in sales and commission, mutual funds.
Right.
I never even had a Series 7. For 20 years, I was 6 and a 63.
Okay.
And I opened up an insurance agency. And when the fixed index annuity world erupted out of nowhere about 1997, I was on the cutting edge of that with Keyport. And all the way through to about 2014, that's pretty much where I stayed. I had the insurance agency, life and annuity. I was offering mutual funds, variable annuities, variable life insurance. But I made a conscious decision to walk away from that actually in 2010. That's where I left the broker-dealer end of the business. And I solely concentrated on the insurance side of it. And for relatively close to 5 years, that's where I stayed.
Right. All right. Well, good. So now you've been at this for how long then? You said 5 years?
Well, I've been in the industry total 34 years.
Right.
I spent the first 20 on the broker-dealer side. I spent 5 years on insurance-only fixed products. And it was close to 11 years ago, actually, that I opted to start the study for 65. And a little over 10 years ago, I achieved that. And I started to develop a different practice management, fiduciary basis, work only in the client's best interest, take the capital under management. And at the same time, I focused very directly on tax management. Because when you talk to people and you tell them you're a financial advisor, Brian, a lot of the time they either try to put a stake through your heart or they throw holy water on it. By focusing on tax management, being biased to that side, in reflection, I find when you communicate with somebody and they ask you, what do you do? And you tell them, I specialize on a fiduciary basis in tax ramifications, tax mitigation, tax deferral. And you look them in the eye and you can tell them, the type of process where if you have a $10 million building you'd like to sell, and you have a $3 million cost basis because you've held it 26 years, you can't. And if you're tired of 1031s, and if you're tired of all the other strategies involved, if you'd like to exit at your volition, I work with processes where you do not have to pay the current income tax. I work in the world where it defines the 1031 to have 5 or 6 alternative processes, up to and including defeasance into deferred sales trusts.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a great way to initiate a conversation with higher net worth individuals. Because if you ask any room with anywhere from 10 to 1,000 people in it worth $1 million, what do you dislike most about your wealth? And they will tell you the tax. When you can show them how to offset the tax, they will continue to talk to you. We're all technically financial advisors. We're all fiduciaries. Would you show people of a higher means how to defeat the tax legitimate, then they will talk to you a second time, a third time. And you can bring opportunity to them they're not getting from other advisors. And to them, the opportunity is to able to use their capital in a manner they see fit, still well within the confines of the Internal Revenue Code, 100% compliant, but in a manner that allows them to be flexible that they didn't understand previously.
Right. Great. So when you do that and you work with the tax side, then what kinds of things happen? And how does it affect your relationship with the client?
Well, first of all, it allows you to build a tighter bond with the client. As an example, in the past 18 months, I've helped clients sell about $24 million of either business or real property. Mm-hmm. And the cost basis on all of it was probably around $9 million between the entirety. Mm-hmm. And I was able to show them how to do this in a manner where they could capture the entirety of that capital and place it in a special trust. And by virtue of that, and I don't mean a Delaware statutory, this is a deferred sales trust, Section 453. The granddaddy of all of the 1031s and related is Section 453. And because of that, I was able to help them save that money. Now, this means they have their capital sequestered from current taxation. And yet, because these are all accredited investors, they are now able to reuse that capital for further investing.
Great. Well, good. So then that's the basis of it. Do you do this with all clients, or is it just more the business-oriented type clients where they can take advantage of those tax breaks?
Individuals, you can be selling a business. Mm-hmm. This works with any appreciated asset, any. Now, you may have inherited your grandmother's Apple stock 30 years ago, which, as we now know, is worth a couple of bucks more. But even after that step up in cost from way back yonder, what's the value now? What's the risk of selling, even if it's simply a capital gain? Because as we know, if you're in a state like California, New York, New Jersey, et cetera, how are you able to sell that without taking at minimum a 30% bite? And if you're dealing with appreciated properties, keep in mind, you're not just dealing with the clawback, the recapture tax. You're also dealing with capital gains and related. And if you can avoid a 1031 and not have to deal with a carry forward of depreciation, capital expense, of loans, the debt, and all of that, it places the client in an entirely different world. And once you can show them how you don't have to have a tolerance for the status quo, you are in a position where they want you as a go-to for this type of information. They want to do business with you because most of the time, their existing advisors, and I do mean their CPAs, their tax attorneys, and even their existing financial advisor don't understand this. Right. It's not arcane. It's not unknown. Most simply don't have a grasp of it.
Mm-hmm. Right. Interesting. Good. So do you have a network of specialized attorneys and accountants that understand all this work?
Yes, I do, actually. I have a network of attorneys, of trustees, CPAs, and others that do understand this and are willing to promote it.
Okay.
I believe the greatest failing between the advisor and the CPA is they point at us and they tell us we're all about the money. We point at them and we tell them you're not taking enough time to look at future tax. You get a symbiosis going. You let the CPA know that their job, and you have to rather rewire them. Now, the hardest thing for a human being, a two-legged, carbon-based life form to do is to rewire the way they think. It's called change management, right? We've all suffered from a deficiency of change management skills. Once the CPAs understand that their tally, their work, their obligation is for the lifetime tax expense of that client. It's not today. Stop reacting to the prior year. Get working in advance for the next 2 generations. And that way they'll never lose the client. And it creates a higher bond, just as it does between the advisor and the client. And by placing themselves in that position, they are still the linchpin, the kingpin of all the processes, all the transactions. And this also creates within the client a much greater grace for understanding that although the advisor recommends it, the CPA is in complete accord. And
Right.
that is how you channel the relationships to work for the benefit of the client. Even if there is no business for the advisor to do, when you work with the CPA and you find there's really nothing the advisor can do for the client, but you bettered the CPA's relationship, don't you think that CPA wants that advisor back in front of more and more clients when they acknowledge the fact you really are doing what's best? Because as Zig Ziglar has told us often, if you do enough good, and I'm paraphrasing, you do enough good for enough people, you're going to do a lot of good for yourself too.
Yeah, it'll come back to you for sure. Good. So Jason, this is a really good specialized work. Now, do you charge fees to do this then? And does it involve their asset allocation and their regular portfolio as well? Are you managing that part of it or just the tax part?
No, I don't necessarily manage the tax part. The attorneys manage the trust. The trustees manage the pro forma process where every year with the tax filings are done to maintain good order and compliance. What I find within this from a large proportion of these transactions is the money's going into a specific trust to defer the taxation. That trust requires a financial advisor, a fiduciary advisor, to work parallel with the fiduciary trustee. And the majority of the transactions end up having funds flow to the trust, requiring a fee-based advisor. The trustees don't want to work with a, shall we say, a broker, a commission-based advisor. They want a fiduciary fee-based advisor that can bring in the TAMPs, can bring in personal skills, and most importantly, truly understands the mechanics of it for the compliance, which means there's a good buffer. When the client has questions, I'm able to answer them. I don't have to push them off to the trustee. Their job is maintaining compliance for the IRS. My job is maintaining the assets and the communication as an intermediary to keep everything in good order.
Right. Okay. So the asset allocations and the investment selection, are you involved in that or do you have others do that for you?
You can use TAMPs and third parties. I do quite a bit of it myself. The funny thing is asset allocation is not necessarily that complex if you have a reasonable understanding of how to assess risk.
Okay.
So when I open up my laptop any given day, there's $40 million plus of assets I'm managing directly at this time. That's exclusive of the 401ks, the pensions, and other assets I manage. I use some TAMPs, but I do enjoy the personal management. And some will tell you it takes too much time, but it really doesn't, because if you have a skilled assessment of your client's risk tolerance and you're not using, shall we say, fringe elements in equity or related, you can really put together a solid portfolio that performs within let's say a couple of degrees, let's say, of what the market bellwethers are. And you can establish your limits to buy. You can establish your trailing stops. You can even mirror or mimic some of the well-known portfolios to a degree and establish those parameters. And that way you have your eyes on the prize. I try to keep the costs for my clients down as much as possible, because as we know, even 40 or 50 basis points long-term adds up to a lot of money.
It does have.
And in some instances, you've got to use the third parties because it's almost a requirement for certain aspects of what we do professionally. But in many instances, I believe the advisor can do it themselves. And I've taken that to heart over the past 10 years and trained myself very well in that aspect.
Okay, very good. Well, I would say it sounds like a great program. So how do you get new clients now? Are you primarily talking to folks that have the tax needs, or are you taking referrals on all different types of clients?
My clients all come from referral. They're coming from trust attorney referral, tax attorney referral,
Mhm.
CPA and EA referral. But most importantly, and I also am a member of BNI, Business Networking International, and I founded the chapter. And I would say about 22% of my revenue in this firm is coming from those referrals also. But
Right.
the best referrals are primarily the professionals, but more importantly, second and third tier from those the professionals have referred to me. Because it's the hands-on, it's the communication. Let's ask ourselves, what is the primary complaint people have about physicians, attorneys, and many other professionals, accountants? It's the communication. I don't get a call back.
They don't listen.
You're willing to take the time to communicate and respond to your fellow human being.
Right.
You establish, you knit, you weave, shall we say, a bond that is almost immediate. And one of the first things, if you are more readily able to communicate quickly when people reach out to you, is they will say, as a new client, I'm not used to this. My last advisor didn't, my CPA doesn't.
Got it.
I tell my clients, if it's not a CPA that I happen to work with, include me when you're corresponding.
Yeah.
If there's no response back, let me know. I will email or call your CPA, and I do this with some regularity, and ask them, why are you not responding? When you add that touch, when you humanize who you are, and you're able to better serve their interests in that matter, related to nothing you're doing personally or professionally, you would be shocked at how you build a future revenue stream
Right.
based on referrals from those people.
Right. That's awesome. Well, good. Well, we're coming to the end of our discussion today. You've offered some great insights. Is there anything else you would like to share with the whole group? If you could give like one major message to our advisors, what would you say about how to be successful in our business?
You really want to be successful, you have to consistently learn. You have to never want to suck the air out of a room. You want to be sure that no matter who you're talking to, no matter how old they are, no matter who they are, if they know more than you do, it's okay to sit down, be quiet, and take notes. Because as you learn from every involvement, you will eventually escalate that and find you are talking to people that have extraordinary intellectual property.
Mhm.
And because of the fact you are a bit more demure about how you present yourself, they are more willing to share it with you and tell you, take this and run with it. And I've done that for a decade. And I think it is the greatest installment of process of success in my firm is, as I politely say, sit down, shut up and listen, and then you can take it and run with it.
That's right. That's right. That's great advice. And it's about personal service and about making sure that you listen to people and you really do your job as a good financial fiduciary.
It's the only way to fly.
That's
If you
right.
actually are willing to take notes, and in finality, I might say, if every time you talk to a client in depth, you recap that and you email it to them and you finish it with, and if I missed any salient points, please remind me so I make sure I'm staying on top of your best interest. If
That's
you do that every time, it's an unimaginable tie that binds you with both a prospective client and then an actual client.
that is a great message, Jason. Well, thank you. Thank you. We're going to check in with you again later on just to see how things are going, but we appreciate your being with us today in the Financial Advisors Workshop, sir.
I believe, Brian, that we're not necessarily in any way competing with each other. And for the benefit of the industry and the benefit of the entire public relying on us, as we share our tangible knowledge with each other, we make it better for everyone involved.
Absolutely. You're so right. Okay. Thank you, Jason. And thanks everybody else for being with us today in the Financial Advisors Workshop. We're going to be back again with another episode of a great financial advisor learning from our colleagues in the industry. And that's what the show is all about. So thanks, everybody. We'll leave it there. Over and out for today, Financial Advisors Workshop. Thanks so much. Bye-bye, everybody.